So, I want to build a new flight simulator for my bedroom. For the past few years, I've been having this thing in my room, and I can't stress how long I've had this. For a little backstory, about 10 years ago, I saw my first cockpit sim video, and I was fascinated knowing you could just build your own cockpit in your house. I told my mom about it, and fast forward to Christmas of 2015, I got my first Cytec yoke and throttle, along with Flight Simulator X. Now, fast forward to 2017, and me and my family attempted to build a decent looking cockpit. I went through many renovations until I stuck with this version. Later adding the overhead in 2020, and now this. The overhead is almost broken off. Some of the wood is also breaking off. The whole thing is just wobbly, and I think it's time for a change. Plus, I could use some extra space. So I created a whole new cockpit design and a 3D model of what the whole thing would look like once finished. And this video is just the introduction of it. I will literally turn this into a full series. But for starters, I think it's time to take the cockpit down. Starting with the overhead panel, which almost killed me. Then this random top piece, the main instrument panel, and this other random top piece. Pinched myself in the process, and then the drill died on me. Fun. You're alive! This was all I was able to disassemble tonight. Now I have the rest of that to take apart by tomorrow. That's a fucking broken Antonov. Now sitting on this dirty ass chair, these are all the switches I was able to recover from both the main instrument panel, which was this only rotary knob, and all these other switches and buttons from the overhead. These might be useful for the new cockpit if I actually do build it, but we'll see what happens. The next day later came, and I finished the rest of the cockpit. Now with that out of the way, let's talk about the new design. This new design change started around 2021 with the idea that I would change to an Airbus half cockpit setup. I later found out that the parts were too expensive, so I backed out. But the half cockpit idea was still on the table because, as I said in the beginning of the video, I could use some extra space. That extra space being used for a new setup. I also chose a half cockpit setup because it's cheaper to build and I don't have any other aviation friends in real life, so a full cockpit isn't necessary. As for what I wanted my flight sim to look like, I went back to the cockpit designs I've seen in the past and with what components are available to make cheap cockpits look high budget. Then I remembered this video, someone's 737 cockpit layout, which looked pretty simple with some Cytec hardware. That's when the idea came to mind to make a simple cockpit out of whatever and mix a blend of both modern and analog cockpits. Oh, and keeping it under a tight budget. And after hours of designing, the cockpit layout of the now named Airball 150. I had a friend suggest that name in a call, and the 150 was just a random number I thought of. Now, I can't just call this a day. I wanted to see how this would look in my bedroom. It'll also be good for reference. So I took some time in Blender with my amazing 3D design skills and created this, a detailed representation of the Airball 150 cockpit in my bedroom. Though sadly there wasn't enough space for the setup I had in mind, but nothing stopping me from just putting a small desk here. Perfect! Also, as a side note, I want to make this cockpit easy to take apart and reassemble to a different location, because if I'm going to be honest with you, this thing isn't going to get done before I move out of this house. But since most of the stuff on the main instrument panel is Cytec and monitors, I could just make the whole MIP come off in one piece. Oh, did I mention that I wanted this thing to be plug and play too? Now, you might be wondering how I plan to build all of this on a tight budget. Well, thank God for 3D printers. I currently have my own, but it broke recently, so I need to buy a new one. But there's a lot of things in this cockpit that can be easily made with 3D printing instead of paying so much for parts. Even the small things add up. This could even help with making your own custom panels for your own cockpits, or even just a simple annunciator like this guy. I even planned for these fire handles to be 3D printed. Another budget-friendly way to make a home cockpit could just be from printing out posters of your panels and making them work for under $70. You could also 3D print your own panels like I mentioned earlier, but if you want to save money on filament, I wouldn't suggest it. Damn! There's even companies coming out with flight sim products that you can normally find for almost $1,000 for very cheap, like WinWing for example. Not sponsored. I also chose Cytec because many of their products for flight sims are pretty cheap and give off that analog cockpit look, similar to the Boeing 757 if you use them right. And I already have a few monitors for the display screens, so there's some extra money saved. Pretty soon I'm going to be buying some wood to actually get started on this project, so if you want to see that, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Also, in case if you're wondering about the budget I have for this cockpit, it's somewhere between $1,000 to $5,000. Only exception being a PC, because this laptop that I'm using right now to edit this video sucks ass. But if you're enjoying this video so far and want to support this project, you can either subscribe to this channel like I said earlier, or you can get yourself some FBA merch. It really helps out a lot, and trust me when I say this, the hoodies are very comfy. You can buy this merch as well, but this goes to another project that I might explain in another video. Anyways, back to the cockpit though. To basically summarize this video, I want to make a half cockpit to save space, use whatever is possible to make a cheap cockpit look high budget, keep it between the $1,000 to $5,000 budget, and get a new f***ing printer. And that's basically it. Let me know what you guys think. Should I make changes or keep things the way I planned? And if you have any suggestions, leave them in the comments. And with that being said, I'll see you guys in part 2 where I'll actually start building it.
Well,